My friends and I were planning a bicycle vacation. Since we all lived in Memphis, we figured Florida would be a good place to go. So we made a plan and set a date. But as the date got closer, things began to unravel. 2 full days of driving, schedules, flights, work. Too much hassle just to ride a bike. It was beginning to look like the trip wasn't going to happen at all. And then we had another idea. The biking country in West Tennessee is so great. Why don't we map a ride from Kentucky to Memphis? Find the roads too small for most maps. The roads just right for bicycles. Yeah, what's wrong with that? So we did, and this is our story.
I think that will be good back there. Who are we missing? Are there 11 of us?
Are y'all ready to go? Everybody got your seatbelts on.
Yeah. Rolling. Hey, turn the air on. AC back there.
There's AC here too.
Yeah.
We got our own. Woo.
By now we started calling ourselves the K2M team. After all, we did have sponsors, and that made us feel kind of special. We weren't on vacation. We were on a mission to make a map. The route projected 155 miles over 2 days. We decided to reserve a base camp hotel Friday night at the halfway point in Ripley. Early Saturday morning, we drove about an hour to the Kentucky border to start our day 1 ride, which would end at the same hotel in Ripley. We were excited, and we all wanted to ride, but one of us had to stay behind and drive the sag wagon. We had agreed to take turns. Laura heroically agreed to be the first driver. Our unexpected adversary that day was a 12 to 15 mile per hour headwind right out of the south, and we were riding dead into it. It wasn't just slowing us down, it was wearing us down too. We were so concerned about rain, I don't think any of us gave the wind forecast much thought. We had packed food for lunch and were able to stop at Tim's childhood home in Ridgely, where we ate and rested our legs. The next 35 miles would be on the Great River Road along Highway 181, right on the Mississippi River. I knew some of this highway was on top of the levee, but I was surprised to discover a 35-mile stretch of what has to be one of the most beautiful biking routes anywhere. After about 10 miles, you sort of drift into another world. It's like being on the ocean. We were now 57 miles into the ride and resting at the intersection of Highway 181 and 88. It was also decision time. Do we follow the MRT route east on 88 back to Ripley for the night, or do we head west into the Chickasaw Wildlife Refuge on a road that we know turns to gravel for 7 miles, but would connect with Highway 19 and put us within a few miles of Ripley? Since we had the SAG vehicle at hand, we chose to take the route through the refuge, knowing that if it got too difficult, we had a way out. Problem was, we were behind schedule and losing daylight, but it turned out to be the best time to ride through an absolute wilderness.
I could use some more water.
When the road first turned to gravel, it was mostly hard-packed with some asphalt underneath it. I found it challenging but not that difficult to ride. A 25mm road bike tire would have been a better match than our thinner 23s, but we made do. A few of the team chose to ride this section out in the sag wagon. I could tell from the watermarks on the trees that the wildlife refuge must flood during the high water seasons, which explains why this road is gravel in the first place. But it was worth it to ride through such a remote wilderness. Don't expect your cell phone to work here. By mile 70, I was riding out of the Chickasaw Wildlife Refuge and onto a paved road out of the bottomland. But I was climbing a steep bluff that felt like Mount Everest. First the headwind, then the gravel, and now this.
Oh no.
Although daylight was fading fast, I was now only 5 miles from the hotel in Ripley, 5 miles from cold beer and dinner at the Mexican restaurant in Ripley. We were now halfway home.
It's been a great ride. A little windy yesterday, but the roads have been great. Traffic has been great. Not very many places to stop, so you should bring your own food. But great scenery. Enjoyed it thoroughly. See how today is.
None of us were looking forward to the first 10 miles because we would be riding along Highway 51, which is a divided 4-lane highway. It's the only route over the Hatchie River, so there's really no alternative. Not yet, anyway. But it turned out to be a piece of cake. It was newly paved, and the shoulder, which looks like a giant bike lane, was at least 12 feet wide, and there was very little traffic on this Sunday morning. We made good time to Covington, where we left Highway 51, and our route turned west, back towards the bluffs of the Mississippi River. By then, we all had one thing on our mind: breakfast at the Gilt Edge Cafe at mile 108.
Bacon, hash browns, a white toast.
Pancakes, 1 egg.
The cafe and its customers are very bike-friendly, and they welcomed our large group with open arms. Breakfast is served all day long. So we left Gilt Edge, powered up from a full-on country breakfast of scrambled eggs, hash browns, pancakes, and grits. Our next stop would be the historic town of Randolph, which sits atop Chickasaw Bluff No. 2, with a panoramic view of the Mississippi River. By now, we were only 40 miles north of downtown Memphis, and riding on roads we knew well from our regular weekend trips out of Shelby Forest. From Randolph to Memphis, the bicycling terrain looks like a picture from a bike trip catalog. The route winds through gently rolling terrain on roads lined with thousands and thousands of towering oak trees.
Oh, here we go, down into the bottomland.
At about mile 125, you begin another descent into the Mississippi bottomland. The land opens up to reveal thousands of acres of farmland that are underwater at least once a year. Watch for Black Springs Road at mile 127. It's your way back up the bluff. It's a steep climb and is known by local riders as Heart Attack Hill. The only way up for most is in top gear, weaving your bike from left to right. It's actually easier to ride up than walk. After the climb, the route winds along the bluff, with the river appearing frequently through the trees. At mile 137, you officially reach the edge of Shelby Forest. There are water and restrooms at the visitor center near the entrance. Or if you ride a bit further, you'll find the famous Shelby Forest General Store. They can serve up a good chicken wrap sandwich, and they have a great deck for taking a break and hanging out with the rooster. As we pedaled away from Shelby Forest, we were only 16 miles from downtown Memphis. As we approached the Loosahachie River, the route would take us along North Watkins Street, which is actually a divided four-lane highway. The motorists here are very used to seeing bicyclists, so it's an easy crossing. Then the route cuts through a North Memphis neighborhood to avoid busy Highway 51. We are now on North 2nd Street, which bridges the last river we have to cross, the Wolf River. Now we're riding our last miles along Greenbelt Park in Harbortown. As I pulled up to the final endpoint, a little kid shouted. He seemed to know we had just ridden from far away, from Kentucky to Memphis. And so we had a few beers at Harbortown and packed away our gear. As we talked, we all agreed it felt like we had been gone for much longer than just 2 days. It felt more like a week. It had been a journey to remember. Later, I sat with some of the other riders, and we talked about the K2M ride.
When you tell people, I went on, what did you do this weekend? You could say, I just did 150 miles on my bike and I didn't stop. Okay, it was no big deal. But from Kentucky to Memphis, now that's something they're going to talk about.
The take from it is this is a thing that anybody can do inexpensively. We had a 15-person van and rented a trailer, and we had 11 bikes that we're able to put in. You don't carry much. You don't need to carry much if you're going on like an overnight. But easy to do, and a little bit of preparation, a very little bit, and a good map.
We were in the Delta area for the most part of Tennessee, which is going to be really close to the river. But the lake, Reelfoot Lake that we rode around, and the county that I'm from, Lake County, is all flat. And then those western parts of Dyer and Obion and some of those other counties, over next to the river, it's really flat. So it's pretty easy riding.
And then when we got up on the levee road after the lake, I felt like we had the world to ourselves. There was virtually no traffic at all. It was like the road was paved for bicyclists.
My best experiences on the trip were on the gravel road, which, I loved it. To me, it was such a challenge to be mindful and not fearful, but steady and grounding down, finding the hard ground, not getting caught up in the loose gravel, and being very determined that I was going to complete that part of the ride more than any other part. And I did, and that was very rewarding.
If you would go back and say, what were the 2 favorite things that you're always going to remember? I think on the first day is the gravel, and then the second day, the really, the point that you go like, what is this here? Was the lookout at Randolph. Never expected anything like that, and everybody was the same thing. I thought, wow.
We all had GPS iPhones. We had this map that was done, and we still frequently we broke into a couple of groups. There was a group a little bit ahead and a little bit behind, and we had we went off on some tangents. People took off. So so I think the map is a important thing here.
Well, we had a tough time on the ride for sure because we probably had about a 15 to 18 mile an hour south wind, and no, it doesn't always blow, and it certainly doesn't blow that hard. And I've ridden that Great River Road hundreds of times, and that was probably the strongest wind I've ever ridden in. It really is neat to have done it all in 2 days, and kind of think, well, that's pretty cool. We rode from Kentucky all the way to Memphis, and of course it's not for the. Well, I was going to say it's not for the novice rider, but we had some novice riders, and because we had a support van, you know, you can ride 20 miles instead of 70 each day, and just do your whatever you feel comfortable doing. But yeah, I mean, we had a great time. You know, I think 2 people, 4 people, or 15 people. I think it was pretty cool. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Glad we did it, and probably ought to do it again.